my great pleasure to introduce and have Lindsay Kaplan, one of the co-founders of Chief, here with us at SPC. Quick intro on South Park Commons, which is where we are today. We're a community where folks who are looking to discover what they want to do next come and join, and our whole ethos is you can come and navigate the idea maze together and build your life's work. So we have physical spaces here in San Francisco and Bangalore, and we welcome any of you that might find yourself in this phase of thinking whether or not you want to start your own company, like Lindsay has started her own company, to come and chat with us. But again, welcome, Lindsay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah. Lindsay has such a tremendous career that I'm going to let her kind of talk about her highlights. But she was an early stage operator before starting Chief with her friend, Carolyn. And Chief is one of the most just talent-dense networks of women, probably the most. And it's very impressive what they've created. I'm not sure if there are Chief members in the audience today. But everyone that I've met has loved their experience, so very, very excited to learn more about how you started it. And she's also an early stage investor, working with a lot of founders that are at a similar stage as many of the SPC members here. So really excited to hear about her and her journey. We'll focus a lot about the early days of Chief and dive into just early founding stories as well. But would love to start off with learning a little bit about you and kind of your journey before Chief.
Cool. So hi, Lindsay. Nice to meet everybody. I have no idea how I became a founder, because if you looked at my resume, it just does not, I have no tech background at all. I did spend my formative years very nerdily on my 386 computer growing up, playing Oregon Trail, so that could have been an indicator that I was going to be a nerd when I grew up. And I was a loner that read a lot of books. Actually, there were probably a lot of telltale signs that I would be a founder. And I absolutely hate when people tell me what to do. I don't know if anybody here feels that way. Founders, welcome. So prior to Chief, I started my career in media. So I started in book publishing. I was working in magazines after that. Both of those industries not doing that well. This is in the aughts. Worked agency side at an ad agency. And my role, I was always kind of doing marketing, communications. Started to realize, this is 2010, I'm dating myself, that Facebook was a really big thing, as was Tumblr and Foursquare and a lot of defunct social media networks. So I started putting brands on social media, and then got really jealous of the people working in social media and wanted to jump onto that side. So joined a few very early stage startups that were small, that didn't go anywhere. Product market fit, leadership issues, started to get really burned out, and thought maybe I'm just terrible at this. Maybe I have bad luck. Maybe I'm a horrible marketer. I felt like I knew what to do and I couldn't actually get these startups off the ground as the marketer. And I got an email, cold LinkedIn message, I should say, from it was so creepy. The subject said, mattresses, ? And it was the founder and CEO of Casper, which had not been called Casper yet. It was an untitled mattress startup. It sounds creepy, right? It's not good. So I was okay, I'm going to do one more startup, and if this one fails, I'm going to either move to the woods and write a novel or go to business school. I don't know. I'm not good at this. So I joined unnamed mattress startup as the first employee pre-launch. That turned into Casper, which became a very massive, big D2C mattress company, sleep company. I was there for 4.5 years, grew that, helped grow that, I should say, from again, pre-launch to well into Series B and beyond. And then I decided these guys are smart, but like I can do this, right? Like I am pretty qualified. So like what a turnaround story from me thinking here I am going to completely leave New York because I'm terrible to feeling such ridiculous confidence that I thought with my co-founder, I would go and do it myself. And so that's what led me to find my co-founder, raise our seed and launch Chief. And that was, we raised in 2018. Launched in 2019 and eventually raised in total 140 million, making us at the time one of the fastest female-led companies to get $1 billion valuation.
That's amazing. I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit on how you and your co-founder decided that you two were the people to start this business, what you saw in each other, and like if you had any qualifiers you were looking for or tests you put each other through. I think a lot of folks at SPC are looking for co-founders and are evaluating those relationships. What did you do?
Yeah. So my co-founder and I are very different people. And to me, that is a factor a lot of co-founders overlook. You see a lot of co-founders coming out of business school together, and it's like, you guys literally just learned the same exact shit. Or you find people who have worked at a startup together and they decide to leave. You just came from the exact same 2-5-year experience. So what was nice about our backgrounds is she came up through early stage startups as well. But she went to Harvard Business School. She loved spreadsheets. She had a background in some finance, operations. And my background, obviously, well, you heard all about my background, was not that. My background was comms, brand, design, storytelling. And what we found was those differences were really complementary. And the test was, could we get to the same answer of the question and like get there in a completely different way, right? And her way ended up being like logical and the math in order to get to that answer. And mine would be the like gut-driven, creative, psychological way in. And that was just really affirming. And to this day, when we both, typically we almost always agree on things, but it's so much more powerful when you agree and you've not just, you know, you don't just have a partner agreeing with you, but you have somebody with a completely different skill set agreeing with you and getting there a different direction. So that's what really like, cemented this relationship. And I would say the second thing is we have very similar values. So we're both from small towns in upstate New York. We both are kind of middle-class people who kind of forged our way into the startup world. And I think we both have the same, we're both not really into clothes and fashion. We both are super aggressive. Like there's just this like commonality, even though we're different, that the values match up in a way that felt refreshing, but also familiar.
Like speaking the same language, even though you're coming at it from different perspectives.
You kind of want somebody that you will both roll your eyes at the same thing. That's how you know your values are aligned.
So then tell us about the ideation process to land on Chief. Like, did you come together and think like this was the first idea and this was like what you knew you wanted to create? Or tell us like how you landed on it. Did you kill any idea in the process or any other version of Chief that could have been today that you might have kind of navigated through?
So I don't think this is typical. And I wouldn't say like it worked for her. Like, do not take this as a learning. The original idea we had is very similar to the idea that is up in existence today. For better or for worse, one might say we shouldn't have. Where we came to was, so we modeled Chief off of an existing business that works and works well. And I think when people are thinking about idea generation, people are looking for an invention. And so often, you don't need to invent anything. There are no new ideas. Every idea has been done. It, to me, is more about finding something that can be repurposed for a new audience. Even with Casper, like a mattress had been sold in a box before. There was a company called Bed in a Box. It existed. And yet Casper, we put a completely different brand around it. We tried to appeal to this millennial and like tap into the zeitgeist of D2C at the moment. So similarly for Chief, this idea of an executive network existed. There's plenty of women executive networks. I just didn't want to join any of them. Like, they sounded horrible to me. And I felt like if I didn't want that, there was nothing that was appealing to somebody who was like a different breed of executive woman. So the idea itself was not new.
Yeah.
The way in which we could execute that idea and brand that idea and find the right market for the idea, that was the new element of it.
That makes sense. And I guess to round out and like tie it back to the co-founder, did you come to the idea together? Like, or did one of you kind of present it to the other person? How did that?
Carolyn brought the idea to me.
Okay.
Again, but she had said there is an executive network called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. It's 90% men. You have to be a president or CEO of a specific company under 45. All of the qualifications that allow you to enter into this organization. It's not their fault, but it's mostly white guys, just because of like that's who owns businesses of that size in America right now. And we can go into all this socioeconomic and misogynistic reasons that exist. We won't get into that now. But it's a great organization. It's super sticky. People love it. Like, members of YPO are obsessed. The renewal rates are sky high. And so she was really inspired by the economics of that business. And she brought the idea to me, and I, as a feminist that loves a brand challenge, immediately was struck by it and wanted to partner with her on that idea.
So you have this idea, you have this co-founder.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned you raised a seed round in 2018.
Yeah. It was horrible.
Easy?
No. No. So many no's. All no's. It was the most demoralizing month of my life. It was, now,
at least it was only 1 month.
Okay, this was 5 years ago. So was it a month? Was it 2 months? VCs operate emotionally. As much as they want a data room and they want to understand the product and they want a demo and they want your resumes, they are, like all humans, emotional animals. And so what do people want? People want what they can't have. People want what other people want. And like, the no's feel like they just stack on. And the second you have a yes and you share that yes with somebody else, all of a sudden, oh, really? That other VC's interested? Like, it's very predictable. But when you're in it, those no's sting so hard.
Yeah.
And we had no after no. And when we finally got a yes, that yes both gave us a little bit of confidence to go out and get a few more yeses, because you only need one, and that one gets you another one and another one. But it was incredibly demoralizing. And it's interesting because every VC that gives you a no gives you their feedback, and it's overwhelming when the feedback is different. If it's all the same, you know you have a problem, and it's, you have like 8 pieces of feedback that are all the same. But when you have 20, 40 pieces of feedback that are different, it is really difficult to make decisions on whether or not you should pivot, should you change the idea. And as I mentioned, we didn't. We decided, again, because all of that negative feedback was so different, we stuck to our guns, stuck to the original idea, and ended up in a pretty successful place.
Do you look back? I've done this exercise. We empathize with each other when we were talking about our backgrounds, because I also had like 99 no's, like literal 99 no's. And I look back at the very first pitch compared to the very last one, and it's pretty stark, the difference between like what you say when you go into that first meeting versus like all of the changes. I'm curious, was there like one meaningful shift in your narrative or traction or something that you felt like you were able to evolve to, like, or was it really just finding the right person that believed in the two of you?
It was a friend of a friend. I walked into a VC office and one of the guys was like, "Wait, are you Dan's friend?" And I was like, "I could be." Who's Dan? Well, it's like, Dan's a common name. Okay, so I know Dan, and then he was like, and then all of a sudden I see Dan, and I'm like, oh, Dan's working out of here. Again, emotional business. Mm-hmm. So we walk in immediately. I'm like, oh, this is a friend of a friend. Immediate good rapport. Mm-hmm. There is an openness and a willingness. And I say this as a learning of, when you go out and you network, if you are trying to raise money, you have to meet people. You have to put yourself into awkward situations. You have to shake hands. You have to go to the lunches, the dinners, the speaking engagements, because you have to be two things when you are a founder. You have to make a great product, and you also have to be a storyteller, because you are going to have to storyteller to investors, you're going to have to storytell to customers, you are going to have to storytell to future employees. And it is about being a people person if you want to be a founder. And so I knew Dan. And so did that get me the deal? No. But did it allow me to like kind of come in with this soft-ish friend of a friend relationship that put me at ease? Mm-hmm. I think he was kind of rooting, the VC was rooting for me because he kind of knew me. I was like, hi, Dan, in the back. Mm-hmm. It helped. Yep. And you are lucky to be in New York where you can come to these things and meet people and keep those loose connections, which are super helpful for whether you stay a founder, whether you become a co-founder, whether you work at a startup. New York is about connections.
So you raise this round.
Yes.
And presumably we don't have anything yet.
Oh, I had nothing.
Yeah. So what do you do now that
I
you have money?
I had a great deck. What did I do with the money?
Like you have money now. Yeah. Like what do you first do to create?
Immediately give myself a salary. True story. I'm like, I had a kid. Immediately give myself a salary. You should pay yourself. I'm going to say that again. Give yourself a salary and pay yourself, because you should. You need to be able to like put food on your table and not be freaking the fuck out so you can focus on your business. We immediately get to work trying to get our first customers free launch. So we simultaneously start selling against what we think the idea will be, and we start free sales. This is the fall of 2018, and then we launch Chief in February of 2019.
What did the launch look like? Because you have a physical space now.
We had a physical space in Tribeca.
Okay.
And we had 200 paying members.
Wow.
In 2019, who had each paid between $5,000 and $7,000. And so we were making bank. And those customers, by and large, it's funny, when we went out and raised our A, all the meetings, they were like, okay, you tapped your friends, now what? And I was like, oh, sir, these are not my friends. I do not know these ladies. I have no friends, except Dan.
Except Dan.
Hi, Dan. But we cold emailed people. And the first check we got, the first person who paid, so Chief is an executive network for women. We cold emailed executives, and the first person who paid was the chief customer officer of Walmart.
Wow.
So then we started telling other people, join us. We have members like the chief customer officer of Walmart. And so that started to snowball.
So you open up your space, 200 members.
Yep.
Do you feel like, oh, it's working? Like we're onto something, and you're just building more and more conviction? Does it feel like things are just working and working out for you guys?
No. Immediately, there's problems. Immediately. Because it's a startup. And this is, like, we don't even have a tech platform. We're sending out event invites. Everything's a mess. We have wait lists almost immediately for our events because we start, all of a sudden, we have 300 people, 500 people, 800 people. But that didn't stop us from being like, we should go raise an A immediately. Because when you don't need money, you should go out and raise money. Because VCs are emotional, and people want what they can't have, and people want to bet on a winner. So we went out and we raised a Series A that spring of 2019.
How much were you trying to go out and raise?
We wanted to raise 20 and we raised 40.
Oh, wow. Dan, again. Another Dan.
No, it wasn't Dan. But I remember we went back to San Francisco, and before we had 99 no's, and this time there was like a bidding war. And it was bizarre, right? Like we had all of these no's, and all of a sudden we had the complete opposite problem where we were getting wined and dined. And well, this is a side story because there's a lot of women in the audience. And I was so nauseous. I threw up outside of Andreessen Horowitz. And my co-founder looked at me and she was like, "Are you fucking pregnant?" And I was like, I was pregnant. I was. So I shouldn't have been wined and dined, but the kid's fine. He's fine. He's 4. Fine. He plays chess. He's fine.
They'll always be fine.
He's fine.
So what would you say, and like we can fast forward to kind of like today, what's exciting to you, but what would you say was like the pivotal moment, if any, over either, because COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, thankfully after the Series A.
After the Series A, I felt like Chief never had a normal year of business because we had this launch that kind of blew up, and then we rode 2019, and then we decided at the very end of 2019 we would sign a bunch of really expensive real estate deals that closed in like January of 2020.
Wow.
And then the pandemic hit, and we were at the top of the conversation with all of our investors that like we were just like a write-off. Like this thing's going to be dead in the water. And we pivoted the entire company online. And we talked about this earlier. When the pandemic hit 2020, it was like a tsunami, and it either took you out or you could ride it. And we somehow rode it. And we went national really quickly because we were fully digital now. We weren't in person. And it led to a host of different problems because once things came back into person, every single person nationally was like, "Where's my Clubhouse? Where's my in-person experience?" So, we rode a wave of scale and growth. So of course we went out and raised again, because that's what you do. But it came with other scaling operational problems that were just brewing under the surface. And in many ways, there were problems that we never addressed back early days where we had those wait lists and there was too many people because the growth could hide some of the problems. And that's the scary thing about growth is you want it so badly. And then when you actually achieve growth, it does mask some of the issues underneath that will eventually come back and get you.
I guess on that for a second, was there a particular moment of Chief's history? Because like you said, you've never had a normal year of business.
Yeah.
Where you were like, "Oh, this isn't gonna work." Like where it was just trough after trough and you and your co-founder just didn't see that this was going to pan out. Was it the pandemic? Or
it was the pandemic. Yeah, the few weeks around 2020 where we did make that pivot. I don't know if people remember the wing, like the wing went under and we were like, the WeWork went under. Again, we were in person. And I think we were very fortunate. This is like a right time, right place, right market, right customer, that our customers wanted connection. They needed Chief. They didn't care about the in-person experience right now. Like they just were lonely and freaking out and had all of this work pressure. And once the panic of 2020 subsided, there was robust employer spending. And employers wanted their executives and they wanted retention. There was bonuses. And so we were able to both sustain the business and then grow the business.
How did you see those steps ahead? Like, was it the two of you? Did you have like an executive team that was like, tell us a little bit more about kind of the ins and outs of how you made those decisions to clearly be able to sustain, frankly, like you said, at a situation in which case most investors would just assumed you wouldn't.
Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with people who can be nimble and love a challenge and want to move quickly. A lot of those changes you need to make super early stage. I remember we were joking like, we're not reactive, we're responsive, right? But like you do have to react quickly. You do have to respond. And it's why you are all here, because if you've ever worked at a big company and like you could see it, like you could see an iceberg and you're like, fuck, we're in this big boat. Like, why are we doing this? I've worked at those big companies. It's the most painful thing. And everybody sees it. It's just so hard to move a giant ship, right? Like the executives know typically at these giant companies when something bad is coming. They've just already placed the bets. They've already raised against this money. Like they can't move the ship in time. And so the luxury of being at a startup, of being little and finding the right people who want to get in a kayak and just be nimble as possible and like navigate that chop. Is chop a thing? Chop, right? Choppy water?
Yeah.
Chop.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never paddled a boat, but it sounded like the right metaphor.
It did. It definitely landed. I guess how would you articulate either your motivation or the impact you see Chief having on its users, on its members, on just like maybe society, being the largest women executive network that exists in a time where, yeah, like we've experienced, frankly, you're mostly walking into a room with men. And
Not today.
Yeah.
I think my personal motivation is a little different than my motivation around Chief. Motivation for Chief was very much building a space where I felt like women could aspire to. Most executive teams are men. Women typically feel othered. And in order for women to achieve parity, like they need to be in communities, they need to feel comfortable and confident and have those spaces where they feel like it is their room. My personal motivation is often just proving people wrong. And I am just like fueled by competitive anger. Because I don't like when people tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And I like to be in rooms that I'm not supposed to be in. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know. Like I assume the people that are in this room, like there's a reason you are either not in corporate or left corporate or want to leave corporate. It's because you want to be in rooms that you were not invited into. You don't want to be told what to do, and you enjoy proving people wrong and thinking about things differently. And that just, life is really boring if you don't try to see what's behind the door.
I know you mentioned that you invest and work with a lot of early stage founders. What is something you find yourself repeating over and over to them potentially, or advice that maybe you give to female founders that there are very few role models, you probably being one of the biggest in terms of what you've created, but anything you'd share with this?
The advice I more often give to women than men, and this is not exclusive, is to raise more money. And just go for it and just do it and be bolder. I think there are a lot, again, it's not all, I don't want to completely generalize, but I think there is a level of conservatism that early stage, I don't know if it's that helpful. The more money you raise, maybe like that conservatism is helpful, and like women actually, their businesses perform better, have lower rates of burn. But early on, just like if you're going to do it, just fucking do it and like raise as much money, like start a process, go do it, and just like be bold and confident. The advice I tell, again, this is not exclusive to all women, and there are certainly some male founders that I've said that to. The advice that I find telling all founders is, I think sometimes people are married to an idea they love that isn't always a good business. Mm-hmm. And just because it's a good idea and you like it doesn't mean it's a great business. And sometimes it's not a VC-sized business. And that is really hard to hear.
Especially for folks that view, like venture is so prominent and view that as kind of like the goal. It often doesn't need to be.
You don't always have to. You don't always have to. There are many situations you should never raise VC, and VC is not the right form of money. If you don't see yourself being $1 billion company that's going to get, acquired by Atlassian or go public, you don't always necessarily need to raise VC. But if you do want to raise VC, go out, be bold, and raise it.
Yeah, raise more.
And raise more, yeah.
What would you say is the end goal for Chief for you? What if you could fast forward any number of years, what would you describe Chief as? Is it IPO? Is it?
Oh, from an exit point of view?
Or you can paint the picture however you would want.
I would love Chief to be a definitive household name, aspirational brand that stands for what it is to be a successful businesswoman. And an IPO sounds really nice. I didn't say it though, you did.
I did. Manifest it. Yeah. We're manifesting it today.
It's going on the vision board.
What's something you'd say, maybe if you're comfortable sharing something you haven't shared, that maybe you're most proud of in the journey of Chief or outside of it, or something about the journey that maybe you don't typically share?
We just had a conference yesterday. There were 800 Chief members there, and the amount of I constantly feel it's a really stressful job. Members give feedback, and these are executive women, so they're all smart, and they all think they could do the job, and they could, because they're all smart, amazing executive women, most of which have more experience than I do, and they give the most critical feedback. There are emails where I'm just like, cool, I quit, I'm gonna go cry, this is terrible. It's devastating. It's devastating. Again, it's not just when I worked at Casper, they're like, this mattress sucks, okay, return it. I didn't sleep well. This is just really, these are executive women, every piece of feedback is cutting if it's bad. The most rewarding thing is, I was at this conference, and to hear women tell me how much it matters to them and how it has changed their lives. I forget that sometimes because I'm so focused on making things better, because the feedback hurts so much and I take it so personally that I often forget about how much positivity is out there, and so many of those good stories where women have been impacted by what we've done. And that's amazing.
It is. I want to make sure we open it up to questions from the audience. And go ahead, Yusuf.
Hey, I just have a very quick question. Have you had poll, or have you thought about creating opportunities for emerging women managers? So not the Fortune 500s, but the second year at Harvard MBA, or someone who clearly has a high acceleration track, but doesn't have they're not 20 years into her career. Just
I'll repeat it just so we have it on the record. Basically a tier of membership for emerging managers, folks that aren't maybe at the executive level.
Yes.
Yeah. Sneak peek.
I big picture think of Chief as it could build into a portfolio company where Chief represents a Chief. It was obviously named because of Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer. But there could be and should be other communities down the road that are, again, the mission is, this is an aspirational brand that stands for successful women in business. You don't have to be at the executive table to be a successful, influential business person. So absolutely working on it, thinking about it, and knowing that there could be and should be other communities in the future that are modeled off of what we've built. What we want to accomplish first, though, is perfecting the product. As I mentioned, we never really had a great normal year of business. And so I think us figuring out the perfect product where some of it's digital, some of it's in person, how she's maximizing her time and spend with us. We want to nail that and get that right before we start building out other communities. But absolutely, it's a great question.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, I've been to Chief a couple times. I have some amazing mentors who are members there, and I remember hearing a story, and correct me if this is not true, but I was told that the green paint in Chief has been named Chief by Benjamin Moore. Is this true?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay.
There was like what's the name of that thing where you add your name and oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
A list, a ledger?
Yes.
Sign-up sheet?
Yes. I feel like I'm on the pyramid game.
For green paint. So the question was around green paint being named.
People wanted to rename the Benjamin Moore paint color to Chief Green.
Oh.
And it hasn't happened yet because we didn't get enough names on the
Petition.
Thank you. I had to think of it. Thank you.
That's not the full question, which is that the reason I brought that up is because I just being there and spending time with some of those chief executive women, seeing the branding and kind of the vibe that has been created. My job right now, I'm an early stage CEO, founder of a tech company, but I'm non-technical, and my whole job is to kind of create community around what we're doing. And one of the reasons I wanted to come tonight is because I've seen how kind of intentional what you've done is. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to how intentional you've been, how much of that is just kind of you and your intuition, or if you've been if you've done research into it. I'm just curious about the community building aspect of what you're doing. And that's why I brought up the Chief Green Paint, because I thought it was really interesting that was part of the marketing.
I love that. We were very intentional about even choosing the color green. Without going into too much detail, I think it is both a stylistic choice that somebody has to make. If you're a creative director, there is a bit of a design choice and a style, but there is also for us the intention of even the green. Often, at the time we built Chief, the wing was all of the rage. It was very pink. And then I think people thought the opposite of pink would be blue. We wanted to find something that was gender neutral because we didn't want to create Chief as a space that alienated men. It wasn't about that. We are not anti-men. Some of my best friends are named Dan, We're not anti-men. Some of our investors are men. We have men that come into Chief all the time. So we wanted to actually choose a color and choose design and words that were thoughtful around how women felt comfortable without alienating anybody else. So to make you feel included did not mean excluding others. And even in the beginning, we had the worst website. It was a landing page with you just put your email in. But we specifically did not want to show any photos of women. And we didn't for years. Only recently, we finally added photos for conversion because pictures of women convert better. I lost to my marketing team. But we didn't want photos of women because I didn't want someone to see a woman and think oh, I look like I'm too young or I'm too old or that woman looks too skinny. I just wanted somebody to see the words about power and having a seat at the table and feeling like they related. Not necessarily as women, we're just constantly slammed with photos of other women. When I think about powerful women, I don't see myself. I see I don't know, Sheryl Sandberg, I see Oprah, I see women who don't look like me. And I think there's an imposter syndrome that many women carry. So every choice in the beginning was very intentional. Thank you for asking that question.
Sorry for being
No. That's great.
Thank you so much.
No, I delight in that.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Zikai, and I would say my day job is creating AI wearables for people, but my biggest passion is about connecting people or provide a real life communities for people. And I think, to be frank, this is my first time hear about Chief, and I feel it's so inspiring what you did in the past. And I want to ask about, in the beginning, basically, I think Chief was like really around networking or like provide this kind of mentorship. So when you were raising your first round of funding, like how did you kind of translate the ideas about what you are offering into something that people are go crazy about, like paying $7,000 every year? You know, it's like, you know, it's just two person. Like how do you translate the ideas and package that into like a product and services, and also it's like really can scale up with using money? Because I think that's very
Yeah, thank you for the question. We modeled our core service on what we discovered made YPO so retentive for their members. As I said, there's no new ideas. There's very few new ideas. That's not true. There's very few of them. And YPO was built on this idea of forum, which is 10-person peer groups. And if you find a great group and you love it, there's kind of a peer pressure that you show up every month for your group. You have these intimate conversations. And so that's actually the core product of Chief. You are not just signing up for this generic network with events. You are signing up and we are curating you into a group of 10 other executives who are at your level, who we have determined would be a great fit for you. And that, for many executives we spoke to, was the selling point. And as we scaled, that got both easier and harder. It was easier because we had a bigger end, so we had more people that allowed us to curate into more defined groups. But it's significantly harder to start curating hundreds of women into cohorts instead of 50, right? 50 was like putting together wedding tables, right? Move her here, move her here. Once you have hundreds, again, bigger N, but we had to start then figuring out for us, building an algorithm around size of team, where somebody worked, seniority level, zip code, to which obviously VC money helped us scale into so that we could operate that service at a much bigger level.
Sorry, can I ask a small follow-up? Like, do you think it's the technology that enabled you to scale up? Or is more about the intentional of like really designing the brand, what you're offering that makes people like retain or also like excited about what you're offering? Or you're thinking like, you know, what's the gap between just having a network around me versus having like 100,000 people like, you know, really enjoy this kind of services?
It's a great question, thank you. I think we are a tech-enabled company, and that there is a emotional factor to wanting to stay that has nothing to do with the technology. So the tech allows us to operate, but it did not, and it helped fuel the growth, but it is not the cause of growth. I believe it was the brand, the movement, the word of mouth that allowed us to scale and retain members.
Go ahead.
Thank you for this fireside chat. It was very interesting. I was wondering about what did you learn about what to do and what not to do from working at Casper and other early stage startups that you think you were able to implement in Chief and make it successful?
That's a great question.
So what did you learn?
Yeah, is everybody
what to
hearing
do,
the
what not to
questions?
do?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I learned at Casper about the power of hiring people that are amazing and quirky and weird. Casper had some of the weirdest, most talented, phenomenal people that I'm still friends with, that I love, the founders, the early team. Those early teammates are so important to the success and growth of an early startup because each person's wearing 12 hats. If there's drama, I'm like, who has time for drama? Like, you are building a business. So I learned the power of people. Something I learned that I didn't bring with me was, I think, it was a different era of spend, but like, we spent a lot of money on like company parties and like big silly marketing initiatives that were like good for brands, that I look back and I'm like, oh my God, we just burned through some money. So I think as founder, I am a lot stingier about spend and wanting to build culture without necessarily like needing to throw an annual party at Tao.
Go ahead.
Hi, question for you. On the belief side of the house, so what's a strongly held belief you've had either in building your career or building business that you recently changed your mind about?
So strongly
Ooh.
held beliefs that you recently changed your mind about.
Oh, what have I changed my mind about? That is such a great question. I change my mind all the time. And I think people who start working with me are surprised by it because I come in so passionately strong. And the second I get new information, I will change my mind. And so I don't know, I can't think of one good example, but I'm going to think about that and come back to it. But I do like to operate both passionately and strongly and stubbornly, but also I think it's important to have the openness and curiosity and willingness to be wrong. And I often tell my team it's like the luxury and the privilege of being the founder, which is like, oh, I've changed my mind. Like, it's hard to do that when you are working because you are lobbying for your team. You are trying to be the champion of your domain and your silo. And so you can't look like you got it wrong. You almost feel like you have to continue down that bet. And so it's a luxury that I change my mind a lot, that I acknowledge and think is a privilege of being the boss.
Up here.
Oh. Hi, I'm Alice, and my question relates a little bit to the first question. So how do you balance the feeling of exclusivity with scaling with venture? Because at a certain point, you're going to have to expand to other demographics, like your question asked.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think about what Chief today stands for, we are looking at executive women, and there are new executive women who are stepping into those levels every day. Every day women are getting promoted. We have a wait list of women who have applied to Chief who are not technically at the criteria we would accept them. And we go back through that list. We often correspond with members or potential new members who can then join Chief later. But it's a really interesting tension because you don't want Chief to get too big because then it's no longer exclusive. But we do also want to grow. And it's why it's interesting to think about different cohorts and communities in the future, because I don't want to press too hard in a way that feels inorganic and in a way that punctures the bubble of the exclusivity. And I also think there's a challenge there of being exclusive, especially today in a society that has qualms with exclusivity. And like, there's a reason there are inclusivity teams. So how do you build exclusivity, but then also do it on a foundation of community inclusivity, right? Like, how do you have exclusivity and inclusivity at the same time? That is a challenge. And it's nuanced, and I don't think everyone's going to be happy. We have people who apply for Chief that don't get in, that absolutely hate us. And I think it's one of the problems that I want to solve through other communities and other cohorts.
Hi, my name is Mahara. I want to say that an example when you change your mind is actually the landing page. You said you were resisting on it for a while, and then
they changed my mind because the conversion rate went up.
Yeah. So I encountered Chief a few years ago. Some of my mentors are from there, and I think something that was really cool for me to see was the tagline, which was like, "It's not what you are, but it's who you know." I think that's what it was, and I think I really admired that because it seems like there's a saying that women become friends face to face and men become friends shoulder to shoulder. And I think for me, hearing you say that, okay, you wanted this green color in Chief to be separate from like boys blue, girls pink situation. It was not about what you are necessarily, but it was about how you can help this collective, and I thought that was really cool. And I'm saying this to preface my question. In your early days, I would imagine that you were selling to a group of women, executive ones, who were potentially moms already or going to be moms. Was there something specific that you think stuck out to that collective of women more than women who maybe weren't pursuing that? And clearly, I'm building in the parent tech space, therefore my question.
Thank you. That's a great question. It's interesting. My co-founder is not married and doesn't have kids. I am married. I had a kid, and then, as you found out, had another. We've gone back and forth thinking about, do we need special programming for parents? And what we found is that when we try to serve too many needs, we do a really terrible job serving the need that we promised, which is you were joining Chief because you are an executive and because it's lonely at the top, and you are dealing with problems like people problems at work and managing the board and layoffs and severance and DEI issues. And so those are personal problems that can come up and be resolved in these core groups in different communities. It's not something that we specifically try to sell to or try to solve on a service level because we're not the experts in parenting. And it's something that we would then try to find a partner with. But we've learned that we kind of have to stick to what we know, which is executive stuff, and be the master of just that domain, and not spread ourselves too thin. Yeah.
Okay, you, and then last, you'll go last, and then. Okay.
Hi, sorry you got cut off.
No, you're okay. Thank you for all of this. I was most recently the chief of staff of a fintech startup that helps startups start up. And so I talked to like thousands of early stage founders. And one thing that I really appreciated you saying was that you should raise money, and you should raise when you don't need the money and all of that. And those are conversations that I would have with so many of these teams, co-founder teams or single founders. And the question is how do you actually convince people that are so tightly holding on to their equity, to their ownership, because they don't want to give up X amount because they think that they're gonna get, I don't know, they're gonna get pushed out in some way or get talked over or whatever. How would you try to convince these founders that like in order to grow, you're gonna have to raise, or you're gonna have to be okay with a very slow and steady. But if you want to grow exponentially, you're gonna have to like give up something.
I don't love slow and steady because I don't believe there are new ideas, which means chances are whatever you're working on, 10 other people are working on it. Again, I'm competitive, right? And somebody else is gonna raise that money, move faster, start hiring, start advertising, and they will eat you for lunch. That's the story that I just told somebody that I'm advising. Like, I know somebody else in this space. Do you think that they're being protective? Do you think they wanna move slow? Like, go out and raise the money, or they will raise the money first. You need a war chest.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I appreciate the extra backup.
Yeah.
So now I can go back to them.
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, this person that like has done it is also saying it.
Yeah, they need a war chest because somebody else will raise a war chest, and then they will get crushed. And I think when you're working, you often don't know of your competitors, and like there are the ones you know, and there are competitors out there you don't know. And those are the ones that are the scariest, right? The known knowns and then like the unknown unknowns.
Yep. Did you have one last question?
Thank you, yeah. Only the paranoid survive. It's a good book.
Okay, last question.
I'm curious if you ever got the comment when you were raising that it was a niche market. Like,
Yes.
And how did you counter that, right? Because like, did people understand the need for like a verticalized, specialized offering for women, or like also because just from the perspective of the number of female CEOs, there aren't that many, right? So like, how did you prove that there was like a huge market to address?
Yeah, so so great question about niche market and how we address that. We got the numbers from LinkedIn. We just pulled up the TAM. There are 5 million women in the US alone who identify themselves on LinkedIn that would fit into the criteria of chief. So again, like having that VC-sized TAM, but almost every investor was like, let me go ask my wife if she'd join this, which is like, fuck man, like really? Like, would you join this? Those people often said no. But I think, again, what I've seen for early stage pitch decks is there is an obsession with the product and there is not enough diligence done on the TAM and comps, right? So I don't feel like you guys are all really sophisticated, and maybe I'm saying something you already know, but having great comps around other businesses that are same but different, that have clearly are VC sized, that have had amazing exits or huge revenue numbers, like show that it could be done. And we showed that, showing like YPO is a nonprofit and it's huge. Vistage had been flipped multiple times by PE. Having that there and then showing it's just a math equation, showing these big businesses, showing our TAM, it's like the easiest math in the world, that if we can execute, and we got 2 startup pros that can execute, 1 + 1 equals big exit. 2, that's math. Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time.
I can take 1 or 2 more.
1 or 2 more?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. You. Yes.
Oh, thanks. My
Oh.
name is Monica. I'm an early stage investor, but in my spare time I also host a podcast. I have a question about this. I feel like the more we emphasize this like women leadership, so I actually come from the Bay Area where like most of the leaders are male, and I noticed that like people tend to like sometimes the more we talk about it, I feel like the negative effect actually raise. Because at one time I was thinking about starting a new podcast. I'm thinking, well, we need more voice in AI. So I want to make the podcast like Women in AI or something. And I immediately got the feedback from some AI researchers or professors and say that, well, I don't want to be tagged as some like women like researcher in AI. Like the more you emphasize the female or women in your podcast, the less likely that some people will want to be associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like so I feel like it's really hard to strike this balance. So I'm curious, like have you faced like similar challenge, and how do you
It's tokenization, right? Like nobody wants to feel like they are the token that I don't want to be a woman founder, I'm a founder, right? Like I can go toe to toe with any founder, doesn't matter what sex or gender I am.
But we also still want to promote the diversity.
Yeah,
right?
it's a double-edged sword, right? Like it's a fine line between creative, inclusive spaces and making sure that we can be a champion for one another, but without feeling like we are being tokenized, or that we are kind of ever feeling like nobody wants to feel like you. What did we? God, I'm doing it again. Petition. Like when people said that like Kamala was like a diversity hire, like fuck that. It's so fucking insulting. It's terrible. And like every time a woman's in the room, there's always a little thought in her head that she's like, not only am I only the woman in the room, did they just invite me so they have a woman in the room? But you know what? Who cares? I'm in the room. So I'm going to be in the room. I know I'm smart. And so do your podcast. Like people shit talk everything, right? So I would just say, you're thinking about the thing that's worrying you more than anybody else, and just do the podcast. I'm a woman founder today. I wasn't invited here to be a woman founder, but the conversation naturally got here. And like people like to label and tokenize and prove them wrong.
I love that.
Thank you.
Last one? Okay.
So in 2018, you raised your seed fund, and today, like, you have a lot of like founders that want to raise with you and send you pitch decks. So can I ask you, what are the things, looking back to the deck that you had that you did like years ago, what are the things you liked of your deck and the things that you didn't like that you would do differently, and what are the things that you see in decks today that you like and the things that you really would want to see in a deck?
In a pitch deck.
Yeah.
Things I like are focus. Again, I think you need like third on product, third on. When I look at a founder, I am looking at, do I believe in this as a VC side, like as a product?
Yeah.
Do I believe that you are the person to execute this? And do I believe that this could be a $1 billion VC backable size business? And I want to see that relationship like tied together in a great story. And early stage is both some of the numbers, like I really want to believe that you have the financial expertise, or you or your team member does, but there's a bit of storytelling there, right? And I'm repeating myself, but it goes back to this. At the end of the day, as a founder, you are a storyteller to investors, to customers, to team. And if you can't tell a great story in that pitch deck that inspires me and convinces me, like that mix of emotion and logic, which I don't know if my early pitch deck had, it was ugly. It was so ugly. It was not yet green. I didn't know yet. Then I think people just get so into like page by page that you forget like the narrative arc of it. Yeah. So that's my advice on a pitch deck.
Yeah. Well,
logic and emotion.
What would have you done differently than what you had at the time?
What would I do differently?
Yeah.
I would weave together a better narrative that hopefully would have avoided 99 no's that sounds like we both received, because I think it felt choppy, and I don't know how convincing we were that we were the right people to take that small investment and build and execute a product that could get to that next valuation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the amazing questions.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining. This was so fun.
Thank you so much. This was amazing, Lindsay, and I promise to get you home before bedtime.
I'm sorry I cursed so many times.
No, this was perfect. I thought this was the right amount.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited, and hopefully for anyone who is interested in Chief, check it out. I think your story is incredible.
Or if you're early stage in looking, feel free to email me. I invest out of NextWave-NYC. So we have an investing thesis around AI, and then I also, on my own angel invest, more consumer-facing, and I have a mild focus on, but not exclusively on, women.
Amazing. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
This was fun.